Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 8 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. We're meeting with Dennis Schooley of the Schooley Mitchel franchise opportunity. The Schooley Mitchel has been featured by Entrepreneur and Inc. magazines and has been honored with the Canadian Franchise Association Gold Frankie Award for their innovative marketing campaigns. They're also named in Inc.com's one of the fastest 5,000 growing companies in America for 2014. Schooley Mitchel is a franchise telecom and merchant service consulting firm with offices across North America. We're going to talk to Dennis about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 8 years we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with Dennis Schooley of the Schooley Mitchel franchise opportunity. And Schooley Mitchel has been featured by Entrepreneur and Inc. magazines and has been honored with the Canadian Franchise Association Gold Frankie Award for their innovative marketing campaigns. They're also named to Inc.com's list of 5,000 fastest-growing companies in America for 2014. Hey, Dennis, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm good, Marty. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dennis. Thanks for coming on the show today. We always like to ask our guests where you're calling from this morning.
Well, I'm calling from our head office at Schooley Mitchel. We're actually located in southern Ontario in Canada. However, we have franchises all throughout the U.S. and Canada. But that's where I am today.
That's fantastic. How's the weather up there today, Dennis?
Actually, beautiful sunny day, so looking probably about 70 degrees. It's nice.
That's fantastic. That's great. You were there at the beginning, weren't you? So who better to ask the question to as far as, maybe describing the history of Schooley Mitchel?
Sure, and I mean, it might sound a little strange when I start to talk about this because I'm actually an accountant. I'm a chartered accountant, the same as a CPA in the U.S. I don't want to scare anybody away because our franchise has nothing to do with that, but
right.
It is where my professional services background started, and we were fairly aggressive in our accounting firm. I was originally a Price Waterhouse guy, but I went out and started my own firm in my 20s. And we got into several things in addition to that, like management consulting and computer consulting, even sports consulting. And as a result of that, we had people traveling all over the place, and our own telephone costs started going up over the years. And so at a certain point, we asked one of our programmers to write us a very rudimentary program to sort of tell us why are our costs going up so much. And when we looked at it properly, we realized that we were paying 30% more than we should. And we thought, well, aren't we stupid? And then we went, well, if we're stupid, probably our 700 accounting clients are pretty stupid too. And it turned out, yeah, they were. So really it was sort of by providence that we got into the business. It was really looking at our own issues and trying to solve them. And we got into the business of helping people reduce their telecom expenses because of that. Now, we've since gotten into merchant services doing the same thing, and we're looking at a few other things as well. But that's really how it started. It was more by chance than anything else.
It was really surprising. You know, when I was doing all the research, Dennis, I saw that one statistic. This just kind of like it blew me away. So studies have shown over 80% of telecommunication bills contain errors. That's pretty significant number, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. And I mean, we actually call it confusology, and we think it's actually a science perpetrated by the telecom companies. But most people don't know how to read their bills and don't understand if there are errors in their bills. And certainly when it gets into a business environment where things start to get more complex, it's even more difficult. You know, and I'm not going to flat out say that 80% of bills have errors in them, but certain surveys have shown that. Some of our franchisees have experienced that, and we simply recover that money for our clients is what we do.
That's fantastic. For our listeners who are maybe unfamiliar with Schooley Mitchell, Dennis, maybe you could talk if you were at a franchise show and someone came up to your booth and they said, so typical question, what do you guys do? How do you typically respond to the question?
Yeah, and my previous discussion there a second ago about errors is really not the most important part of what we do, but it is a part of it. So to answer your question, really what we do is help clients increase their profits. So this is a financial service that we provide to business clients. And what I mean by that is our basic statement to a client is you're probably paying more than you should for your telecom expenses, your communication expenses, and you're probably paying more than you should for your merchant services expenses. We have systems and capabilities to help you reduce those costs and therefore increase your profits. So it's a pretty basic proposition. And we do that on a contingency basis, meaning we don't charge any fees for that. We're so confident that we're going to be able to help our clients that we only share in the savings as opposed to charging them any fees. In other words, if we don't find savings, there is no fee. And so that's our basic message at a franchise show that we would give to someone to see if they're interested in talking about that.
You wonder who would ever say no to not wanting to increase their profits either, right? It's a pretty sales pitch, isn't it?
It's funny you say that because that's a question I get all the time. Is this seems to be too good to be true?
Right.
And I get that at two levels. From the client level and also from the franchise candidate level.
Sure.
So from the client level, I usually respond this way, that, you know what, this is a great service, and you are right. You don't take any risk to engage us, but we are willing to do the work and put our effort and our software tools and our systems at play because we're pretty confident we're going to be able to help you. So, no, it's not too good to be true because we're pretty sure we'll be able to help you and that we'll, in fact, earn some of those revenues back. Then on the candidate side, it sounds like, well, everyone would say yes to this. But you know what? That's not actually true. You kind of wonder why people wouldn't say yes. But on the other hand, you do have to build a relationship. They have to trust you and like you, and they have to care enough about their telecom or merchant services to have you look at it. Sometimes you wonder if they shouldn't get their head read when they say no, but just the same, certainly people say no.
Exactly. In studying the model for Schooley Mitchell, seeing that you're not a brick and mortar type of business, Dennis, how do your franchisees at Schooley Mitchell obtain business?
Yeah, and you're right. We're not subject to having that building in the right spot in order to bring clients in, but we're also not able to put a big sign up and say, hey, come see us and get your telecom consulting done, because really nobody even knows what that is.
Right.
So Instead, it's much more like if you think of an accountant or a lawyer or a banker, that kind of person, how they build their business, we certainly do all of those things. So we interact with those other professionals in the community. We refer business back and forth with those other professionals. We do networking, all those kinds of things. However, our people also do more aggressive things like picking up the phone and calling and explaining our service, or using telemarketing services to set appointments. We actually did a recent survey with our franchisees on the results of telemarketing services for their business, and the results were they earned $23 back for every dollar they spent on telemarketing. So my point in all that is there's a lot of different ways for us to grow our business. It's a professional business, like an accountant or a lawyer. It's just we don't deal with tax or law. We deal with telecom expenses and merchant services, but we build our business like another professional would build theirs, and it's a client by client and a referral basis business.
That's fantastic. How does the economy impact the business, Dennis? I mean, when the economy's bad or the economy's good, how does it impact Schooley Mitchell?
Yeah, that's a good question, and a lot of businesses, and I hear on their advertisements or I read it or I see it, that they say they're a recession-proof business, and the reality is they're not at all. I mean, if there's discretionary spending involved, then that's not recession-proof.
Right.
Ours, in fact, is not affected by economic conditions at all, and the reason I say that is this. In a poor economic environment where discretionary dollars are at a limit, and therefore certain things will not be spent on. In our case, though, companies have to reduce expenses even more urgently, so that's right up our alley because that's exactly what we do. And yet, in a good economic time, they're expanding their technologies, their telecom facilities, their communication capabilities, and that's right up our alley, too. So really, there is no effect by economic conditions on our business at all, and that's a real strength.
That's fantastic. How about your industry, Dennis? I mean, what industry, do you lump yourself into or categorize yourself into, and how big is your industry, if there are any numbers on it?
Well, it's a huge, huge industry, and it's kind of hard in terms of what you really evaluate. I mean, if you look at the telecommunications industry, there's about $1 trillion of, and nobody understands what $1 trillion is, by the way. I mean,
exactly.
That's 1,000 billion. Well, what's that? It's just a real lot. But there's $1 trillion spent every year on telecommunications. Well, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, some watchdog type groups have all said in articles that they've written that there's as much as a 35% glut in that marketplace, meaning people have either been over-provisioned or there's errors in their bills or they're just paying too much. Well, 35% of $1 trillion is an awful lot of money.
Sure,
and that's what we consult about, is helping businesses not fall prey to that extra money they shouldn't be paying. So that's, if you can evaluate that business, that's what we do. The merchant services business is probably just as big in the sense that there's billions of dollars of transaction fees that happen when people pay by credit cards and debit cards, and we help businesses make sure they don't pay more than they should, and they almost all are. And so, it's almost impossible to put a number on it based on your question, but it's humongous, I guess is the best way to describe it.
That's a good answer. What types of characteristics, then, do you look for in your franchisees, Dennis? I mean, when you're interviewing a prospective franchisee.
And you might be a little surprised because some people might automatically think I have to know technology or telecom or IT or something. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. And that's why I said a little bit earlier, this is a financial proposition. We're really just asking companies, can we help you increase your profits by decreasing your expenses and not paying more than you should? So we don't need a technical person. We teach them the basics of what they need to know. We've got very vibrant software tools and databases that help with, analyzing situations. So we're more looking for executive management, sales, marketing, consulting people. They don't have to have a tech background at all. That's not what we're about. Fact is, I don't. I'm an idiot when it comes to technology, quite frankly. So
Most of
that's
us are,
not what we're looking for. We're looking for good business people, really, because those are the ones that are really kicking butt in our business.
That's fantastic. What about the demographics? The demographics that are important to Schooley Mitchell. I mean, who are the clients typically then, Dennis? I mean, if you can categorize them.
Well, the clients, and I guess demographics, which is important to a lot of people in terms of their success, it's really not important to us in the sense that it doesn't matter where we are.
Right.
And frankly, and of course people always ask about niche marketing and vertical marketing and target marketing and how important those are. And they are in terms of how you're going to succeed. But the reality is in our business, if you have a phone, I can probably help you, which means everyone. Now it doesn't mean we just take a shotgun approach at everything, but it does mean that every segment of business out there needs our help, from the smallest businesses right up through to multinational corporations, and we help them all.
That's fantastic. So what's the training like then, Dennis? I mean, once they decide, they decide it's a match, they like you, you like them, and they decide to go forward, I mean, do they typically come to headquarters for training? How does that work?
Yeah, and again, that's one of the real strengths that we have. And the initial question is, yes, they do come to our head office here for 7 days, and that's the initial course. They do 3 more days of video training when they go back home. But my main point in this discussion would be that our training is perpetual. We have a support team of 27 people here at our head office that do nothing but help our franchisees each day by training them how to get clients, how to use the tools, how to find solutions. And so we have an absolute ongoing training process. We actually have what we call a quick start program in our system where we actually help our franchisees with their clients for their entire first year and beyond. And we have an annual training conference. It's not too bad to take because it's usually in Cancun. But our training is really something that is continuous and perpetual.
And that's one of the things you're getting too, Dennis, aren't you? I mean, when you're buying into a franchise system, is you're getting that support and you're getting the training and all that other stuff, which is really important to starting a business, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and that's probably one of the things we're most proud of is our people and how they think about us as the franchisor. They're always very complimentary because we do go out of our way to try to help them each and every day. And it's not just a matter of them calling in to us, which they can do at any time. We actually call out to them and make sure, they're on track and we can help them with things. And so our support is certainly one of our strengths here.
That's great. Our listeners may be wondering, Dennis, what's a typical day like? I mean, is it like so it's a Monday through Friday because you're mostly dealing with businesses? I mean, how does that work?
Well, yes, it is a core business hours type of business. So there's no, you don't have to open up at 5 a.m. and close at 1 a.m., that kind of thing. There's none of that. So it is a core business hours business, but certainly you can work extra or you can manage your life accordingly too, because there's lots of freedom and autonomy in this kind of a business. But your clients themselves are going to operate basically on a 9 to 5 basis. So that's when you're going to be dealing with, the actual interaction with the clients, whether that's what we call a briefing or a sales call, or whether that's presenting a report or helping your client along. That's going to generally be in normal business hours. But certainly people can do the analysis part in their off hours as well if they want.
That's great. The majority of
you asked what
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You asked what a typical day looks like, and maybe what I should say is there's really only 2 things that our franchisees do. One is get clients, the sales, marketing, business relationships thing, and the other is, okay, I've got a client, now what do I do? We call that production. That's the analysis part, and we have software tools and databases to help with that, but those are really the only 2 things that our franchisees do.
That's fantastic. The majority of our listeners, we call them aspiring franchipreneurs, Dennis. I mean, most of them have it in their mind that they want to go into buying a franchise, and we find that most of them are very confused, as far as where to even begin. And in studying your background, it sounded to me like, you're very much an entrepreneur. What advice would you give to them in their quest to buy your franchise?
Well, I've actually written several articles about that actual subject, about how to do the analysis properly, what to evaluate. But I've written several articles about the emotional fulfillment part of that. And I think, when I talk to someone that's a candidate to look at becoming a business, whether it's a franchise or not, there's certainly criteria you've got to tick off. Is my financing in place? Do I have the skills to run this business? Is it a good business that's going to be profitable? All those sort of financial related and the things that you should tick off on any list. But I think it really comes down, even more importantly, to those emotional things. Is this going to make me happy? Is it going to give me the freedom I want to control my own destiny, make as much or as little as I want, spend the time that I want, make my own decisions? At the end of the day, am I going to be able to say I'm happy? Because I think that's the biggest test. Another piece of advice, though, I'd give to someone that's evaluating franchises is that it's very easy to get caught up in that fear that sort of drowns you. It paralyzes you. And oftentimes it's a matter of the fear of failure, or this is a huge step, I don't know if I should really do it, or that you're surrounded by a bunch of naysayers because when you talk to them about it, they give you every reason on earth why not to do it.
Right.
Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to the people around you. You should. But that's only a part of the formula. And too many people don't pursue their dreams because someone said that's not going to work, or you're not matched to that, or you're crazy, or stay where you are, those kinds of things. And frankly, consider it, but go with your mind and your heart. Do the right analysis, and really think of anybody that you would look at with respect and maybe even awe. Sure. And they're the people that did break through that fear barrier. And really, if you want to be that kind of person, you got to do that. You got to bust through and go for it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I love that term, emotional fulfillment. And, you're talking about support too, Dennis, and I think that's one of the things that you get too when, of course, you're buying a franchise. Yes, support with training and things like that, but also I think there's also sometimes that emotional support, isn't there, in working with them?
Oh, absolutely, and not only from the corporate location, but, you've got, in our case, we've got over 100 people that have the very same situation each and every day. And, in Schooley Mitchel, for example, we're not protective at all. There's so much business for what we do. That's not the issue at all. Our franchisees, and that's probably the thing we're most proud of, is our people are always wanting to help each other because they know if one person does better, it's probably going to be good for me too. And so, yes, that kind of support is there. It's not like you're on an island by yourself. You've got every bit of advice that you could possibly want is just by picking up the phone and asking your fellow franchisees or calling head office. And that's really a significant thing for people to realize that I can bust through that fear and I'm not going out there and I'm going to be an island in the middle of the ocean. I'm here with a lot of people doing the same thing, pulling on the same rope.
Yeah, I think that's well said. One of the topics we were talking about on last week's show, Dennis, is item 19. Do you disclose financial performance representations, commonly referred to as item 19 in franchise?
Yeah, we do actually, and I know lots of franchisors don't, but we do. We're very proud of our results of our franchisees, and we have several schedules in there actually. I guess the most meaningful ones would be that we've looked at the average earnings for our franchisees over the years, and our top 25% make almost $700,000. I think it's $670,000 a year. Our average overall is about just around $200,000, and after 1 year, when we average everybody that's got more than a year under their belt, it's about $235,000. So, we've got people making a lot of money. Now, it does take an effort, no question about it. It's not going to just fill your pockets with money because you get a Schooley Mitchel franchise. But our numbers are very impressive for the people that work at our business, for sure.
That is very impressive. What about an exit strategy? How does that work for Schooley Mitchel? We haven't talked about that a lot on the show, Dennis, over the last 8 years, and we're starting to incorporate that question more into the show.
Yeah, and that's a subject dear to my heart. I've actually written an article about that very subject on its own. Mm-hmm. But I think it's an important part of the criteria before a franchisee even makes a decision to join a franchise system. Because and lots of franchisors don't want to talk about that because, okay, what do you mean? You're wanting to get out and you haven't even gotten in yet, So, but the reality is any business person should be thinking of two things. How much revenue and income is this going to create for me over time? And, all right, what do I have left at the end of the day? Well, that's one of the things that we really have that's fully under the control of the franchisee. If you're in a brick-and-mortar franchise, doesn't mean you don't have an exit strategy. It's just subject to things that are not in your control, like traffic patterns and demographics and buying patterns and economics and, that kind of thing. And whatever that situation is at the day you want to sell, that's going to dictate your price, as well as your profitability, of course. In our case, though, every client that our franchisee gets not only creates a revenue stream, it becomes an asset that at the end of the day can be sold. So if someone builds up a franchise that's going to, build, whatever number of dollars, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year, they're going to have an asset that's somewhere around probably more than that value to sell to somebody else. So it's really an important part of the formula. And in our case, if you think of consulting businesses on their own, they're not really strong in the exit strategy part because the value is delivered by an individual, and a company will buy the service from the individual, and they may get a renewal if they do a good job, but you can't sell that to somebody else. Ours is very much like an accounting firm or insurance agency where it's a process and there's a churn of clients, and so each one can be serviced by another person that's trained properly. And so our exit strategy is very strong, and we had one sell for well over 7 figures last year. So.
Wow, that's fantastic. And as you said, it is important to discuss in the beginning, an exit strategy. I think you're probably right about that, is that, it's always that uncomfortable, elephant in the room maybe, you know what I mean, as far as like bringing that topic up is the exit strategy. I got into a business many years ago, and we never discussed it, Dennis, and it became a mess, as you can imagine. So, any business, or anyone going into business should bring it up at the beginning, not at the time of the exit, because... Well,
they absolutely should. I mean, a business that makes $100,000 a year may look to be better than a business that makes $75,000 a year, but the reality is it may not be if the $75,000 business will sell for $500,000 at the end of 5 years.
Sure.
You add all that up, and it's much more profitable in the $75,000 business.
Absolutely. I think that's well said. So I can ask you, because you're the founder of the company, what are the plans for the future then, Dennis?
Well, it's, I actually have a vision statement on my wall. And, it has to do with the growth that we expect to have. And of course, that's all driven by our franchisees' success. And we've got very successful and very happy franchises. And right now, and I suppose the number is going to change as people listen to this program, but right now we have just over 100 franchises in our system. My vision is someday we have 1,000, and perhaps outside the United States and Canada. But in my heart and mind, I know that several people are millionaires because of what we've been able to create together. So our vision of what a great company is really what we think of in terms of the future, is that, we're going to have that number of people and many very successful people in our system and looking to grow and offer even different services than we do now.
It must be a wonderful feeling for you, Dennis. You know what I mean? Because you were, part of that whole thing, in franchising this particular model and then sharing that with other entrepreneurs. It must be an amazing feeling for you, I imagine, to get to see that.
Well, it is. When I talk about emotional fulfillment, I certainly have that.
Yeah, that's
because we've been able to create something here, and it's not just me, it's all the people around me, including our support team, but also our franchisees, because they contribute to where we're going and what we're developing. But what we've created has created the opportunity for, first of all, for clients to save a lot of money and therefore have money left over to do other things and be more profitable. That's pretty cool. And then our franchisees are very successful in doing that, so that makes me feel very proud because people have changed their lives based on becoming involved with Schooley Mitchell. And that is very emotionally fulfilling for me individually and for all of us here. So
that's fantastic. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information on becoming a Schooley Mitchell franchisee? Dennis, any websites you'd like them to go to? Any numbers you'd like them to call?
Well, certainly we can give both. The website is www.schooleymitchell.com. That's SchooleyMitchell.com, SchooleyMitchell.com. And our phone number is 888-311-6477. And they can ask for Pam or Julia or me or anybody else that they'd like to talk to.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Dennis, for coming on the show. I think this is a fantastic franchise opportunity, and I would really like to invite you back next year as you continue to grow. I think this is wonderful.
Well, thank you for having me, and you're welcome, and I'd love to do it anytime you want me to. So thanks, Marty.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Dennis. We'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Franchise interviews from Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Coming up in our next segment, we're going to get advice from the chairman of Two Men and a Truck, Melanie Bergen, and that's coming right up on Franchise Interviews.
Are you looking for a franchise that delivers? Businesses will always need shipping, and for more than 25 years, loyal customers have depended on Unishippers for reliable savings and exceptional customer service. Unishippers is focused on just one thing: helping small and medium-sized businesses save time and money on all their shipping needs. And as the largest reseller of complete shipping services in the country, we have the buying power to ensure that we succeed. The Unishippers franchise offers low startup costs, no equipment or real estate required because they're not retail, residual income, and a quality of life and work-life balance. For more information on becoming a Unishippers franchisee, go to www.unishippers.com and click Franchise Opportunities or call Franchise Development at 801-708-5822. That's 801-708-5822. Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919. Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, Franchise Interviews has been hosting this show now over 8 years, and we've done over 400 shows. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but we actually started off as a newsletter in 2006. We had a handful of subscribers, and the newsletter started to build over time. And we got a proposal to turn the newsletter into a radio show. And I originally said no to the idea. I was terrified about doing a radio show. And I thought about it for about 3 days, and I said, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. And doing the radio show has really been, I would say, one of the top 5 or top 10 things that's happened, you know, over my life. So it's been a real amazing opportunity. We've interviewed some amazing people, from Michael Gerber to the guest you're going to hear today, Melanie Bergen. Melanie is in our Great Quotes in Franchising podcast for today, and she is the chair of Two Men and a Truck, and she was on our 6-year anniversary show. We put a lot of thought as far as who we'd like to have on the anniversary show, and she was a perfect choice, a wonderful interview. And one of the questions we asked Melanie on the show was, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? And of course, her response was brilliant. So here we go with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising with Melanie Bergen, the chair of Two Men and a Truck.
To go or grow, they add a
Right.
truck, add a truck, add a truck. And then if, depending on what the economy's doing, then you could take a truck out if you had to. Whereas with other franchise systems, you usually have to add a store, add a location.
That's true.
So it's just another beautiful thing. I'm using every second of your time I can to encourage people to think about this business as an opportunity.
It's an amazing opportunity, and you know, I guess I could officially call you an expert. I know that I believe you are a certified franchise expert, and one of the questions we've been asking on the show, Melanie, for the last 6 years is, you know, what advice would you give to our listeners? We call them aspiring franchipreneurs. You know, so many of them know they want to get into a franchise opportunity, but it seems I don't know, it seems a little more difficult today because there's just so much out there, and I think a lot of our listeners, they just simply don't know where to begin. I think they get a little overwhelmed. What would you say to them as an expert in franchising?
I would look at the concept and think about who the audience is that you'll be working with.
Right.
Because no matter what product or service it is, it's not really the product or service, it's who you're delivering to. And, is this an audience that you could be comfortable with? I guess that would be the first thing I would look at. Second, are there unit economics? Third, is this a fad? Is it going to be around 10 years from now? Fourth, how expensive is it to get involved? Are you going to be able to get a loan for it? 5, is it going to be difficult to learn this product or service, or will it be pretty easy to learn and teachable to others? Also look for state regulations. Is there a location available in your city or state? Are there special regulations toward that product or service? Because a lot of products and services are regulated, and I'll tell you moving is. But the biggest thing your listeners can do is call as many, once they receive the permission, call as many of the franchisees in that system that they can. And a couple red flags, if you get the FDD from a company and there is not an item number 19, and that shows just shows average numbers that franchisees make, that's a red flag, and find out why they don't have that in their FDD. Secondly, when the prospect does receive permission to call franchisees and they give you a very short list, that's a red flag. And it'd be nice, 2-Man Truck, we give all of our franchisees, even people that have left the system, because we want that prospect to call as many people as possible. And if they say, I would never do this, I made a big mistake, then the prospect should ask, well, you sound disappointed, would you do it all over again? And if they say never, then it might be good for the prospect to say, then would you be willing to sell your location? The truth will bubble up in that answer. And then keep in mind, if we, it's not often this happens, but if we had a prospect called 2 Men in a Truck, and they said, we talked to this franchisee and they don't like the way you do things, then we would probably say, you know what, you won't be happy in our system then, because that is how we do things. So I think for a prospect, they're going to get a bulk of their education by checking references. Very, 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 very important.
Wow, that's a great question. I never heard that before, in all the years I've been studying franchising is, if someone said, they never would have got into it again, then you say, well, would you sell me yours? And they said no. That would be like, well, okay, I never thought of that. I mean, that's very clever. I had a feeling your response would be, nothing less than spectacular. It's
So thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to hear that whole interview with Melanie Bergman, the chair of 2 Men in a Truck, you can actually go to franchiseinterviews.com. You can go to our franchises listed alphabetically page and just go to 2 Men in a Truck. You can go to our franchises by category page and go to our home services page. And we'd like to thank everyone again for making this podcast and this show such a big success. It's amazing that we've been doing it now 8 years, and we hope to do it another 8 years. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising from Franchise Interviews. Take care, everyone.